Hello and welcome back. In this video I'm going to have a look at the Kaster Food Incorporated, I believe that's what it stands for. This one, Ever 17 Kaster Food Inc. Placeable. But what I want to do here is actually install it into a map through Giants Editor and then set all the scripts up and all the bits and pieces. Hopefully I'm going to be able to explain how to do that. I'm not sure if I'm going to break the video up, might do it all in one go, I don't know yet. We'll just play it by ear and see what happens. Okay, so I've chosen County Line Map to do this. It's a really big map. I've created an area on the map already. It's the only place I could find that would really suit. So for the video, it's not really that important. Just a place, an area that I can work with. That's all I really want. So I've created a rather large area because with all of the mods in this particular pack, if you haven't used them before as a placeable, they are pretty big. So they take up quite a lot of area, a large area. Now obviously if you're working with a map that is a bit tight for space, potentially you could place them around the map in different areas, have part of it over here and part of it over there or whatever else. But for me, I want to put it all in one place, just at least for the video, just so I can concentrate in one particular spot, and then makes it easier when I get into game later on. So let's get into this. Okay, so first of all what I need to do is copy over the actual mod itself, the actual folder with all of the parts of the mod. I need to copy that over into the actual county line map. So we've got a county line map here. We'll just minimize that a little bit, and then what I'm going to do here, you can do this however you want to do it, have a play around, see what you come up with for yourselves, but I'm going to put it somewhere in the structure where the map 01.i3d is, and I've already got some folders here which is part of the actual county line map, but I want to create my own folder. So I know exactly where it is, and if I then choose to delete it, it's really easy. I've got it in my own folder. If it all goes pear-shaped, I know exactly where it all is, and I can move it, delete it, whatever else. So I'm going to call this folder mods, just really straightforward, simple, and I'm going to open that up. You could just copy the entire folder if you wanted to into there without creating a new folder, but I want to kind of separate it from everything else, and put it in my own folder. So what I'm going to do here is just take it from the desktop, drag it in, and there we go. It's now in my county line map, or the county line map. What I want to do then is click in here. I'm going to rename this because I don't want it that long. Just makes path file names and whatever else really complicated. So we're just going to rename it to Kaster. Okay, so now I've got all my parts in here and all the rest of it. Now, anybody who may have had a play around with this and tried to get it into Giants Editor themselves will know that there are some parts of this that just don't work with Giants Editor and all the rest of it. And one part of that is the script that is used, the new field type script, which is by Black Sheep, RC Devil, will only work as a placeable script. It will only work with mods that are placeables. It will not work through the actual Giants Editor setup. If you try and run it in a map itself, or through the map, it just won't work. It actually gives you an error and says this script is only for placeables. So we will not be able to use that script to register the new field types. So the script I'm going to use instead is the reg field type script, and we'll go through that and then set that up as well. So what I want to do here is obviously identify what I do need and what I don't need. So what I'm going to do is go into the mod desk for the Kaster Food actual mod itself. So if we open that up in Notepad++, we can see in our L10N section we've got some parts to do with additional triggers, registering of all the animals and pigs and cows and all the rest of it, and the bits and pieces and the actual units themselves, the storage sheep, storage cow, whatever else. We've also got our actual products which we're going to be creating in one of the units, would be our sausage and meat, and then obviously the name of the unit and some other parts, scripts, extra source files, etc, etc. And then obviously down the bottom here we've got some input bindings for some light switches and stuff like that. We won't be messing around with any of that stuff, but we'll see how it goes. And we've obviously got our field type registration down the bottom here for our meat. I don't actually see the one for sausage, but that's fine, must be somewhere in amongst all of this, I guess. Who knows. Anyway, we're going to ignore all that because I don't really need it as yet, because I'm going to be using something else, so it won't be overly important. Okay, so what I'm going to do first of all is, because I'm actually going to eventually bring over all of the mods so you can see all of them brought into the map, and then you can choose which ones you want to use, which ones you don't. There's a couple which have the same function, but they are just different size, different sort of ways of doing it. But I'm going to bring all of the parts in eventually into the map, so I can show you all of them working and how to get them all into a map. So I'm going to just literally take the entire lot. If you don't have a an L10N section on your map, you're creating a map for the first time or whatever else, and you haven't got that far yet. You probably would have, but because this is more than likely going to be an addition or something else to various other things like additional fruit types and whatever else, but maybe you haven't, I don't know. You will obviously need to bring over the tags as well. I've already got those on the counterline map, so I don't need to worry about that. So I'm just going to highlight all of the text. So on the counterline map, I already know that there are inputs for the light switch, so I don't need any of that stuff. So I'm just going to literally copy over all the rest of it. Not sure about the Kaster food one. Possibly don't need that because it's not going to be in the store. It's just going to be put into the map. But we'll copy it anyway, it's no biggie. So we'll copy all of that, and then what I need to do is go into the actual counterline map, open up the mod desk for that one, find a place to put it. So we'll put it down the bottom here, create a couple lines, and then paste it in like so. Excellent. So we've now got all of our parts in here for this particular mod, for the L10N section at least. Then I want to bring over the scripts and whatever else, so I need to identify what scripts I need. So I don't need the add store category one because obviously that's just for the placeable version. I will need the fabric script, the additional triggers, and that's pretty much it. So all I'm going to do here is just take these two lines here for the fabric script and additional triggers. The additional triggers is referring to this section up here in the L10N section, so I know I also need that trigger, that script as well. So I'm going to copy both of those, come back over, find my scripts section on the county line map, make a new line, paste it in, double checking that the spelling is correct, which it is not, because I want to put it all in the same folder. So I need to change this from a script with an E to a script with an S. There we go, like so. Now I know where I'm going to be putting those scripts into, and those path file names will be okay. Just double checking that there's nothing else I need to bring in. Like I said, I'm going to set up the actual field types and whatever else, but I'm not going to be using the new field types stuff, so that won't necessarily be too much of a problem. I can create my own once I get to that part, and we'll get into that when we get to it. So pretty sure I don't need anything else from there, so I can go ahead and close that down. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save the actual mod desk. This is for the actual map itself, the county line map, and I've now got all of my parts in here, the L10N, all my script stuff set up and whatever else. Okay, so while we're in here, we may as well do the actual field types that I want to set up and all the rest of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize this down, and we'll take the actual new field types, the reg field type script. I'm going to open that up in Notepad++ because it gives us an example section here of how to set this up. So literally all I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the reg field types example text, including its tags, and I'm going to copy that, come back into my mod desk, and I'm then going to come to the bottom of the mod desk here, and I'm going to paste it in, done, like so. Okay, so all I need to do now is make a duplication of this line, because we have two new field types. We're going to be bringing in the sausage and the meat, and I then need to actually paste those in. We've got our text up here for our sausage and our meat, so it's really simple to just copy that, come back down, paste it, and overwrite the calc. So we can do that like so. And we need to make a couple of changes here, because previously it was set up as calc, and now it's obviously going to be meat and sausage. So we don't want things like, potentially the calc would be set up to go into a spreader or a manure spreader or something like that. Obviously we don't want to be spreading sausage and meat all over our fields. Well, maybe you do, I don't know, but I don't want to. So I'm going to leave the rest as it is. The price per litre, you can adjust that as you see fit. Mass per litre I'd probably leave as it is, but you can play around with that. Show on price table, yes please. Create heap, false, because we're not going to be creating a heap of the meat and sausage, because we don't actually have any of the fill planes or the particle animations or anything like that set up, so they won't be displayed anyway. If you leave that to true, it will cause an error. It'll cause a conflict and bring up an error in your log text or whatever else, because it will be looking for something that doesn't exist. So we need to change that to false, so we can come across a bit further. All this stuff can stay the same. and then we need to change this one, use to spray. So again, I'm going to change that to false, copy that, paste it in. That's fine, we can leave that as it is. Add to any fruit, we're going to change that to false as well because I don't want that. Animals count, that's fine, we can leave all the rest as it is, doesn't really matter. So just make a note of what I changed there from true to false, and obviously we've added in our new field types, overwriting the calc with the sausage and the meat. Perfect. We can go ahead and save. Don't need that open anymore. Now, what we need to do obviously here is find all of these path file names and then bring everything over. So we're going to start up with the extra source files here. Let me just tidy that up a little bit. There we go. So we've added in some new path file names for our scripts. We've got our additional map, sorry, our fabric script and our additional triggers. So if I minimize that, we're going to go back into the county line map, and we're going to then go into our scripts folder, which obviously we haven't got those scripts in there yet. So we go maps, then mods, go back in our caster, and then we find our scripts. So we've got our fabric script and our additional triggers. That's the only two we need to copy over. All I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut them from there with Control X, because I don't want them in there, and eventually I will probably delete this folder anyway because there's nothing else in there that I need. So now I've done that, I can go back into my root folder here, go into the scripts folder, paste them in. Perfect, done. They're now where I need them to be. I also need to bring in my reg field type script. I need to then make sure that that's all set up in here, which it is not. So I need to then make a duplication of this line, paste it in. Then I can actually take the text from here, copy that, come back over, paste it in. Perfect. Now obviously if you're working with a map that already has the reg field type script on it, brilliant, because it's going to cut down on some of the things that I've shown you here, and all you will need to do is find where the information in the moddesk.xml for the map for the actual reg field types, and then just add in the appropriate lines for your sausage and meat. You won't need to bring over any other information, but obviously because this one didn't have it, I needed to bring it all in. Okay, so the next thing we need to do here is come down to our in our reg field types. We've got some path file names for some HUDs and some fill planes. Now the fill planes, as I said before, we actually don't have fill planes, but you still need to create the folder because it's actually looking for that folder. If you don't create it, it will then again cause an error or a warning to come up in your log text. It may not actually affect your gameplay, but it will certainly bring up an error, and you know, I don't like errors in my maps, so, or any map for that matter, so I would probably suggest to just create the folder, and then it just cuts down on those errors and warnings and all the rest of it, even if it's a blank folder. Anyway, so we've got maps, HUD, field types. So I need to go back into the county line folder here, and then I'm going to go into maps. I'm going to create a new folder, and I need to name that HUD, like so, and then I need to go into that one, create another new folder, and call that field types, like so. Excellent. So we've got that one. Go back into my maps folder, and we've then got maps fill planes. So I need to create another folder here and call that fill planes. Done. Okay, so now that we've got those parts into there, obviously I want to bring my HUDs into that particular folder that I've just created. So we'll go back into maps, mods, go back into the Kaster folder here, and we've got our fruit HUDs. So we've got our actual HUDs here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy all of those. Actually, what I'll do is I'll cut them out of there with Control X. We'll go back into maps, HUD, field types, and we'll paste that in. And I think I've actually spelt field types wrong. Oh no, I haven't. No, that's fine. Yes, I have. Yes, I have. Now this is something that's really important. When you actually do this, you must make sure that any uppercase letters are included in your spelling for the actual folders, because otherwise what you will end up with is case sensitive errors. So it needs to be spelt exactly like it is in the actual description here in the mod desk. So you must make sure that it's got the uppercase and lowercase letters in the appropriate places, otherwise it will actually bring up an error. Okay, so now that we've got that into there, we need to make a change, because if I actually go back into the script again, so let's go back into our scripts folder. I'm going to open up the reg field types again, and if we actually look in here, you can see that the HUDs need to be named in a certain fashion for the script to actually find them. And if we look down into this section just here for our HUDs, we can see we've got HUD fill, HUD underscore fill underscore calc. Obviously in this case it will be meat or sausage .dds. Then we've got HUD underscore fill underscore calc underscore sml.dds, and again that would be the sausage or meat. But if we look in our HUDs folder which we created, we've got HUD underscore fill underscore meat small. I need to change those to SML, because if I don't, then again it will bring up an error to say that it cannot find them. So I need to change those to match what it shows in here. So I can change that one, and then I'm going to change this one as well to SML, like so. Perfect. It should now be able to locate those particular HUDs and work properly. Just make sure that you actually do open up your scripts if you're having to work with something that isn't native, if you like, to the actual mod that you're working with. At the end of the day, I'm replacing one script with entirely. It's the same sort of setup, but it's actually a completely different script really. It does the same thing, but the way that the script works is a little bit different. So you need to make sure that when you come into, if you're going to, when you're playing around with the scripts that, like I say, aren't set up specifically for that mod, then you need to have a bit of a look into the script itself. Just open it up. Most of them now actually come with some sort of example section at the top of it to give you an idea of what you need to name everything to and all the rest of it. This one even gives you information on how to, what format they must be saved at, all of your fill planes, what format they need to be saved as and all the rest of it. So really well set up and well laid out, this particular script, in giving you as much information to work with. So okay, we can now close that one down. We don't need that. We've got all of our parts set up in there, so I can go ahead and save. I'm going to close that one down, don't need that anymore. Okay, so we've now got that set up, and we'll just go over what we've done here. So I've changed all the parts in the mod desk, added in what I need to add in. I've added in a new script, the reg field type script, which is replacing the new field type script, because the new field type script doesn't work through Giants Editor. It only works as a placeable, it only works with placeable mods. We've added in the fabric script and the additional trigger script, which is, it works together with the fabric script, so that we obviously need both of those as well, because the mod itself is built on the fabric script. Well, most of it is. There are a couple of things that use a different fashion, but we'll get into that later on. So we've adapted the mod desk to point towards our scripts. We've created 2 new folders for our HUDs and for our fill planes, even though the fill planes folder is actually going to be empty, but without it, it could then potentially bring up errors and warnings, like I said before. So we want to avoid those as much as possible. Okay, so if we go back into the Kaster mod here, we'll just have a look, see what we've got in here. We've got some sounds, some textures, shaders, bits and pieces, and whatever else. So we've got the cow lager, which is our cow storage facility. We've also then got our Schaf lager, which is our sheep. Not even going to try to pronounce that. I believe that's the meat factory. Then we've got our Schweinlager, which is our pig storage. We've got a sell point. We've also got a thermobil, which is a cold storage facility for our meat and sausages, and then a larger unit which does the same as the thermobil, but it's just a larger building. So we're going to work through all of those and try and set all those up, including our sell point and all the rest of it. And obviously with sell points, we could set them up. You can set them up however you want to do that in the map itself and whatever, but we'll work through that as we get to it. So, and then later on what we'll do is we'll come back in and more than likely remove a good portion of this, because it will just take up space that we don't really want to keep on the map itself. Obviously when you bring in anything like this, you want to keep your map size down somewhat, and this is quite a large sized map anyway, and I'm not referring to the actual size of the map. I'm talking about the size of the file itself. Some servers, if you do intend to build a map that you want to have multiplayer functionality, some servers will actually limit you to a certain size, so the more you put into the map and make the actual file size of the map much bigger, then you may come across problems when you try and upload it to a server for multiplayer purposes. So we'll do that a bit later on as well. Okay, so now that I've got all that set up in there, I'm going to go into the map itself. Like I said, I've already created an area here, a bit rough, but you know, once you've actually got all your parts in, then you can build up your area around the actual mods that you're going to be importing. It's much easier, in my opinion, to do it that way than try and work them into a small area. Create your area. First of all, doesn't matter how big it is, you can always fill it in later on with something else to make it look like it belongs. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new transform group, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename that to Kaster and hit the tab key so that it locks in the change. I then want to go right click, move up, so it puts it into the transform group, into the scenegraph in a more better fashion. Okay, so the first one I want to bring in here, if we go into file and then import, I'm going to bring in all of these storage places first so I can put them where I want to put them. So we'll start with the cow lager, or cow, the intermediate storage for the cows. I'm going to highlight it in the scenegraph, Control X to cut it. I'm going to click on my Kaster transform group that I created earlier, Control V, paste it in. I'm going to go with it highlighted in the scenegraph here. I'm going to go Control B, bring it over where I want it, and then we'll play around with these and manipulate them in a minute. So I'm going to go File, Import. I'm going to do the sheep next, the sheep storage. So I'll bring that in. Control X with it highlighted, Control X to cut it. Click on Kaster transform group, Control V, paste it in. Highlight it again. Control B, interactive placement, and then we'll just bring it over. You can also do edit and then interactive placement, but it gives you the shortcut then Control B, so it's a little bit easier sometimes to use that. I tend to use either or either, just depends. We're going to go File, Import, and we will click on the Schweinlager, which is our intermediate storage for our pigs. So again, with it highlighted, Control X, click on Kaster transform group, Control V, paste it in. We'll highlight it again, Control B, and bring it over. Okay, so now what we can do is highlight whichever one we want to play around with, and manipulate it, put it where we want to put it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to rotate this round, and we'll put this one over in the corner here, somewhere like that. Then we'll do the next one, which is sheep. So we'll rotate this one and put it somewhere like that. Take our pigs, storage, and we'll rotate that one, bring that one back somewhere like that. That'll be good enough for the video at least. You can obviously get these a little bit more finesse than I have here, get them into an area which works for you. So as long as it all fits in for the video and I can show you what everything does, and I'm good, I'm not too fussed. Okay, so next part we want to bring in. Now, what I probably would say here is, once you've done this part here, you've got your cow, sheep and pig storage centers in, it might be worth then saving it, going into the map in game, actually start it up in game and test the functionality of these before you go any further. When you're working with a lot of, a large sort of import like I'm doing here, sometimes it can be beneficial to just go into game, make sure what you've done so far works before you continue on, because if you start to get too deep into it, and there is one part of this which is a little bit more involved, where you will need to create some of your own user attributes and actually work with the map01.xml as well, which we'll get into later on, and it gets a bit more complicated. So it can be nice to go in, test the functionality of these first, know that they are working, then if you want to, you can make a backup of your map, so you could close this down and then make a backup of your folder or whatever else, so that you know that that part works. So whatever you screw up next, you've got that backup later on. I mean, I'm not saying you're going to screw it up, but it might not be intentional, obviously. But sometimes when you're, again, like I say, bringing in a lot of different mods and whatever else, like we're going to be doing here, it can be nice to just get certain parts of it working and know that they are working with no errors, make a backup of your map, and then continue on from there. it just gives you the opportunity that if something does go horribly wrong, you can delete the whole thing and you've got this part done already, so you can just go back to this part without having to start the whole process all over again. I'm not going to do that because going in and out of game, and all the rest of it is just going to take too long. So I'm pretty confident these are going to work. It's based on the Fabric script, which is a relatively easy setup in all instances that I've played around with, so I'm confident these are going to work. So I'm just going to continue on as we are. Okay, so next thing I want to bring in here is the actual meat factory. So we're going to go File, Import, and we're going to click on this one here. So I'm not even going to try and pronounce that, but this is the actual meat factory itself. This again is based on the Fabric script. So once we get that imported, you'll notice straight away that it actually brings in a separate camera. We don't want that, so we're going to delete it. If you leave it there, it possibly could cause shader issues and lighting issues. As you drive past the actual unit, you might find the light will be different in certain areas. It will be really bright in one area and really dark in another, and all the rest of it. So I would probably get rid of it. Again, you can have a play around with that and see what you think. Just bury it under the map if you don't want to delete it, but I would just say delete it. It's not required. So what we're going to do again, like we did before, we're going to highlight in Cinegraph, Control X to cut it, click on our Kaster transform group, Control V to paste it in. I'm going to highlight it again, Control B to use the interactive placement, and then we're just going to click on the map and bring it over. Perfect. So then it's just a case of again putting it in a position that you want to work with it and all the rest of it. So really matter, we'll just put it there somewhere like that. That'll be fine. Might need to move it when I bring in the other parts, but we'll just leave it like that for now. That'll be okay. Okay, so now that we've got that one there, again this is based on the Fabric script, so there's nothing really we need to play around with here. We can have a quick look in here. We might have some work animations or things like that we might need to have a play around with. We'll just have a quick look. So we've got our input, which is our pig, cow and sheep, and we've got our two outputs, which is our sausage and our meat, that we registered with the reg field type script in our mod desk. So that should be all fine. We'll go into our work animations, and in this particular case we do have some particle systems which would be smoke, so we can set those up as well if we want to. So what we'll do here is we'll try and find where they are. So if we go mods, Kaster, and it's saying it's in the texture folder, so we'll open that up and we'll come down, and there it is, smoke.i3d. So if we bring that up to the top, we'll just lower this down a little bit so I can see it all. So in here we need to create our new path file name. So we've got maps, mods, Kaster with a uppercase K. Make sure you put that in uppercase, and then end it off with the / there. So we've now got our path file name. So I'm going to highlight all of that. I'm going to hit the tab key on the keyboard to lock that change in, and I'm then going to go over to the next one, paste it in, hit the tab key, come to the next one, paste it in, hit the tab key, done. So we've now got our particle animations in, or particle systems for our smoke, and you can obviously see where the the gizmo is there, and that will be where the smoke will come from, these stacks on the roof here, so that's fine. And we can check those out again once we get into game and all the rest of it. So we've got all our parts set up in there. There's no sounds on this one. Perhaps you could add one in if you really wanted to, of the actual factory working and whatever else. Won't do that in this video, but you could do that if you wanted to. So we've got all of that into there, no worries. Excellent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit save now, because I don't want things to crash on me, giant set to the crash and then have to start this over again. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save, and yeah, we'll continue on in a little bit. Okay, so the next part is a little bit more tricky when we bring the next couple of items in. So we'll just work through them one at a time and get them hopefully where I want them to be, and then we can test them out once we get into game. So again, we're going to go File and Import, and we have two items here, which is our Thermobile and our Centralager, whatever that's called. These two items here are storage, cold storage if you like. One slightly bigger than the other one. I'll bring both of them in, but and you can have a look at them. If you're working on a slightly smaller map, then perhaps maybe the thermal bill will be a better option. And then the other one was, as I say, much bigger item. Now these two items don't work on the fabric script like the others do. They work on a slightly different setup. As a placeable, they work perfectly fine as they are, but we need to make a few changes, and we need to change some parts, user attributes and things like that, set up our own user attributes to make them work through Giant's Editor. So we'll work with the thermal bill first because that's much smaller and a little bit easier to work with. So we'll double click on that, bring that in. This one actually brings in a new lamp. We don't need that, so I'm going to delete it. I'm going to click on the thermal bill transform group there. I'm going to go Control X to cut it. Click on the caster, Control V, bring it in like so. Okay. Then I'm going to go Control B and click on the map where I want to put it, roughly, and then we can play around with that and get it where we want it. So we'll just put that over here somewhere. That'll be fine. Yeah, that'll work. So we've still got our largest area over here to bring the other one in. Okay. So we'll bring the other one in as well so you can actually see it, what it looks like and the rest of it. So again, we'll cut it. Click on the caster transform group, paste it in with it highlighted here in the cinegraph, Control B, and then just place it on the map. As you can see, that's a much larger building. So you can use either one, doesn't really matter. I would probably use the smaller one here. This is much too big in my opinion for you know, even this map really. Again, you know, if you were splitting it up and not putting it all in one place, then you could possibly put it somewhere else, but I think what I will probably do here is delete that one and just leave it, but I just wanted to bring it into the map so you could see what it looks like. But for me, I don't think I'm going to use that one, so I'm actually going to delete that one. So we'll get rid of that, and I'm just going to work with this one over here. I think that's what I'm going to do. So okay, so what we need to do here is have a look at the actual way this is set up and make a few changes. So if we actually click on here, you can see we've got a capacity and a storage name and all the rest of it, and if we open this up, we've actually got a solo trigger in and a solo trigger out. This is actually set up somewhat similar to the placeable hayloft, as it says there, index placeable hayloft plant, and as it is right now, it will not work by bringing it into Giant's Editor and then trying to get all the parts working. It just won't work like that. At least I couldn't get it to work like it. So we don't want that. So we need to make a few changes here to get this to work. So I'm going to try and run through what we need to do here with the actual user attributes and how we set all those up. Right, so what we need to do here is have a bit of a play around with our triggers and bits and pieces here, because obviously these are set up incorrectly for Giant's Editor to install. They're only set up okay for a placeable. So we need an index. We don't need a field type. We don't want that one. So what we're going to do here is going to delete a couple of these because I don't want those on there. We don't want that one, or that one, or that one. Don't want that one. We need the shovel target index. Don't need station name. Don't need trigger width. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to change the name of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to something like that. Must be uppercase. So we're going to put our index in like so. We've got our shovel target index, and the shovel target index, if we open this up, refers to this part here. If we look at our attributes on the right hand side, we have a 2 on the end, and that's what that number refers to there, 2. We won't be using a shovel, but it needs to be there for it all to work, so we're going to leave that there like so. That's fine. So then what we need to do here is we need to come into here and we need to create a new trigger. So we're going to go on create, and it must be spelt that way with the uppercase C and all the rest of it, so just take a note of that. And this needs to be a script callback, so we're going to add that in. Then here we need to put in tip trigger dot on create. Whoops, without if I could spell. Create like so. We'll tab across to lock that change in. Then the next one we want is XML files, so we go XML file like so with an uppercase F. This needs to be a string, so we'll add that in, and this is pointing to our map01.xml just here, which we're going to set up in a little bit. So this one needs to be maps/map01.xml like so, and we'll hit tab to lock the change in. We've now got our user attributes all set up the way they should be. And if you want to just double check those against something else on the map, because this is going to be working as a storage place, we can scroll up, come to our farm silo, and if we actually click on the trigger position there, this is where I get that information from, and now they are set up there exactly the same. So the next thing we need to do is set up our output trigger and how that's going to work, so we're going to click on that one as well. And we will just have a look at the other one just to see how that's set up. So if we come up to here, we need to make a change here on our onCreate for our solo trigger. So we don't need the station name, but the rest of it we do. So we're going to go into here, and we've got onCreate and then solo trigger dot onCreate. So if we come to this one, again we're going to go on create. This will be a script callback, so we'll add that in. Then what we can do is come up to this one, take that information from there, and then paste it in down here like so. Hit the tab key to lock it in. Perfect. So we've now got those parts set up. The next thing we need to do is actually open this up, and we've got our solo trigger 02, and we need to add in some user attributes in here as well. So if we come back up to this one here and click on that one, you can see there are some different attributes in here. So what we need to do is obviously add those user attributes in to this particular trigger, solo trigger 02 down here. So the first one we're going to put in here is capacity per type. I'm just going to copy these over from my text that I've got. So we've got capacity per type, which is an integer, and we'll add that in. Then we've got cost per fill level and day, which is a float, so we'll add that one in. Then we've got our fill types, which is a string, so we'll add that one in. Then we've got our onCreate, so we'll add that one in as well. Whoops, that needs to be a script callback, so we'll add that in. And then we've got a save ID, which we also need to add in, which is a string, so we're going to do that like so. Okay, so our fill types are going to be meat, sausage. Our onCreate is actually going to be storage, so we're going to have storage.onCreate. Capacity per type, you can put whatever you want in there. If we actually go back up to our main trigger here, I believe somewhere it told us capacity per type 4500, so we'll take that from there, come back down to here and then put that in like so. Cost per fill level and day, we'll leave that at 0. And then our save ID, what we can do here is come back up to our other one and have a look in here. And we've got storage underscore storage 1. So we'll copy that one, come back down, and we'll put that into here like so, and we'll just change it to a 2. Tab, lock it in. Perfect. So we've now got all of our user attributes, our new user attributes all set up in there. So we've set up our silo trailer trigger in, and we've set up our silo trigger out as well. We've changed a couple of things in there, added a new user attribute in there, and then added some new user attributes in there as well. So we should be pretty good with all of that. Okay, so the next thing we need to do here though is actually make some changes now, or additions to the map01.xml to understand and know where all of these parts are located and whatever else, and how all this works. So that's what we're going to look at next. So if I bring my Notepad++, we'll just close that down. Okay, so what I'm going to do before I do that is I'm going to click save, and we'll update this again just so it accepts those changes, updates the map01.03 with those changes, so if anything goes wrong when the giant Z crashes or whatever else, I know I've got this now saved. So if we actually go into our map01 on the counterline map here, we'll open this up. What I'm going to do here is add in some lines. So all I'm going to do here is I'm just going to copy one that's already set up as a silo trigger for our storage. We'll just make a couple of new lines in there, paste that in, perfect. We go back into our Giants editor session here, and I'm going to actually click on the silo trigger in. I need to take my index, so I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to come back into here, overwrite this one with my new index, perfect. Station underscore farm silo I'm going to leave exactly as it is. I then need to add in my new field types, so we've got our meat, and double click that, our sausage. All the rest of it I can leave as it is. There's nothing I need to play around with there. You can play around with the parts to do with the Piers on PDA and all that if you want to. I'm going to leave it as it is, not really that bothered. So I know whereabouts on the actual map it is, so I can find it. I'm not too bothered. And I've actually found that even changing that to true doesn't always show up on the map anyway on your PDA, so have a bit of a play and experiment with that for yourselves and see what you get out of it. Okay, so now that I've got all that set up in there, I'm going to go ahead and click save, and we can close that down. Pretty straightforward. The only part that's a bit tricky here is actually adding all the parts, the new user attributes, and changing some of the parts in here. The actual XML is just linking all this together to make it work and show up in our in-game menus. Okay, so now that we've got all that set up and all the rest of it, we should be pretty good to go. Like I said, I'm not going to mess around with the the other unit, the bigger building. I think that this is pretty much enough. When you actually bring in that other one, if we go into here, so we've got mods, Kaster. So if you were to bring in the this one here, the Centralager, for our cold storage, which does exactly the same as this unit over here, our Thermobile, just much bigger, you would have to set up the triggers and everything in exactly the same way. So you'd have to go in, change your silo trailer trigger, user attributes, and the in and outs and all the rest of it, and whatever else. So you'd have to do exactly the same to get all of that working, because that unit also works on the same principle as the placeable hay barn or whatever it's called. Last thing we need to do here then is actually set up our sell point. Now I'm just going to put the sell point down here just to make it a little easier to work with, so I don't have to drive halfway across the map and whatever else. Now this is obviously going to be a little trickier with this kind of setup because this is a placeable trigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to import the actual trigger itself, and then I'm going to adjust it as I require to. So I want to keep everything together, so again I'm going to go Control X to cut it, put it in my Kaster transform group, And I'm just going to click on it here, highlight in the cinegraph, Control B, and we'll bring it over and put it on the map somewhere like so. And then what I'll do is I'll probably just move it somewhere a little bit more out of the way-ish. So we'll just put it over here somewhere. That'll be fine. And then we'll just do like so. Now obviously when you set this up in your map, you might wish to put some sort of a sign or something up to say what this actual sell point is. Wherever you just decide to put it on the map itself, create a sign or something to say that this is the sell point for your meat and sausages. Put it next to, I don't know, depending on what map you're working with, you might have some sort of area on the map, perhaps maybe a that would suit better than just plonking it in the middle of nowhere. But anyway, I'll leave that to you to play around with. So what we want to do here is obviously go into our trigger position and have a look in here and see what we've got. We've got our ground marker. That's just the actual 4 points you can see there, just to give you a visual representation of a sell point or a trigger or whatever else. So here we need to make a few changes with what we've got within our actual user attributes. So the best way I would probably suggest to do this is find a sell point on the map somewhere else and then take the information from that. Just makes it so much easier. So what we need to do is find a sell point somewhere and then go from there. So let's have a look what we've got. Not that one. Go into locations. Let's have a look, see what we've got here. I don't know if that's got a sell point in it. Let's have a look. Gameplay, in trigger position. Yeah, there we go. That'll be fine. So we can use the information here if we want to. So okay, so if we come back down to our other one here, and let's just have a look what we've got in here. So we don't need that one. We don't need that one. We'll keep the index. Don't need that one. That one, that one. Don't need that one. We'll keep the shovel target index. And we'll get rid of that one. And we'll get rid of that one. So we'll come back up to our other trigger position here. What you can do is actually drag this over so it's a bit more, you know, out of the way. Gives you a bit more, perhaps maybe easier to look in your cinegraph or whatever else to find what you're looking for. So we need to change a couple of things here. So we've got our index. So we need to change that. Now what I want to do, what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to look in the map01.i3d to find out what these are actually called. So let's have a look. We'll copy that. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to open up the map01.i3d with Notepad++. And I'm going to do my search. I'm going to paste in that index and I'm going to go find. And we now have our information down here, what we need to set this up as. So we already have an index. So we have a map position index which we need to put on onto the in our user attributes. So we'll click on our trigger position here and we'll paste that in, and it clearly states that is a string. So we need to click on our drop down, go string and add, and that is a value of 2, so we'll put that in, tab to lock it in. Then we've got our on create, so we'll take that information, come back over, put that in, and that is a script callback, so we'll put that in. And we have a tip trigger on create, so we'll take that information from there and paste that in, hit tab to lock it in. Got our shovel target index, and then we've got our XML file, so we'll take that, put that into there. That is also a string, so we can do that. Then we can just take our information here because it's going to point again to our map01.xml, so we'll take that and then paste that into there like so. We've now set up our user attributes. Okay, so your sell point, your index is going to be whatever you want it to be, so you can call this whatever you want. let's call it meat sales. That'll do, that's fine. Hit tab to lock it in, and then you need to come up with the name of whatever you want to call that particular sell point. Now obviously if you're going to put it somewhere on the map next to something, then you would possibly call it whatever you're going to call it for that area on the map. So come up with a name, whatever. I'm just going to stick with meat sales just because it's easy. But so I need to go back into my map 01 again. So what I can do here is close this down because I don't need that anymore. Let's put that back over here. So we'll go into our map01.xml. We need to come to our sell points. Doesn't really matter which one, whatever you choose. So we'll just no, we'll put it down the bottom here, I think actually. Yeah, let's copy this one. So let's copy that one. A couple of spaces, and then we'll do that. We'll change our field type to, oops, I've got caps on. So we'll change our field type to meat. We'll make a copy of that. Make a new line, paste it in. Change this one to sausage. Have a play around with the price scale, however you want to do that. I'm not going to worry about that too much. So we'll take our index from the giant seller session there, and we'll overwrite that like so. And then we'll just type in here whatever we want to type in here. I'm trying to think of a name, but I can't think of one at the moment. And we'll just go with meat sales. That'll do. Meat sales. There we go. So we'll just do that. That's fine. For now anyway. You can think of a better name than I can. I just can't think of one right now. And you can then change all your bits and pieces over here if you want to. So is train only false, selling point true. We'll say it appears on the PDA, that's fine. We'll see what happens with that. So we've got all of our bits and pieces there. Yeah, so I'm just going to leave it at that and we'll just see what happens. Okay, so go ahead and save. We'll close all of that down. We theoretically now have our sell point all set up where we want it to be. So we can go ahead and save again, and then what I'll do is I'll get this into a mod folder and we'll get into game and just check all this out, see if we've got any errors and whatever else. If we do, we can cover those before we go any further. If not, I'll get some vehicles up together, get some animals, and we'll test all the functionality out. So hopefully so far you're still with me and you've been able to follow along. It's very complicated to try, for me at least, it's a bit complicated to try and work it out in my head what we need to do adjustment wise and talk about it on the video. So I'm really hoping that what I've been able to do is get it across in a way that you guys can understand. Please let me know in the comments if that's not the case, and I'll try and do better in the future. But hopefully from what I've explained there, the actual triggers that I've set up, fabric script stuff, really easy as far as, you know, you just import into the map and it's just getting the script set up and your mod desk and whatever else. But when it comes to these sorts of things over here with these different triggers and then having to adapt them from a placeable to something that you're going to be playing around with in Giant Setter, that's a little bit more complicated. So hopefully I've been able to do it in a fashion that you can follow along. May have to watch the video in this particular section a couple of times just to get your head around it, but for the most part hopefully I've been able to get it across like I say, in a way you can follow along and understand. So right, with that what we'll do is, like I say, I'll close all this down, put it into the mod folder, and we'll get into game and then we'll test all that. So I'll see you in a bit when we get in the game. Right, so I've got some bits and pieces up together here. I've went and bought some animals. So we'll start with the pigs. Now, one thing I would have liked to have seen on this particular setup, you could add it in yourself, you know, now that you're actually going to be putting it into the map through GE, you could perhaps maybe set something up that you could actually better identify which one of these was whatever. I can pretty much take a guess this is pigs because of the types of these pigsty type things that are in here, so I'm going to guess this one is pigs. And obviously you can bring up the F1 menu and look at it in the F1 menu and see what it looks like in there, but otherwise just go into the trigger. If it doesn't work, then you know you're in the wrong place pretty much. But like I said, if we bring up the F1 menu, you can go into the actual trigger itself and then see that this one does actually say pigs, so you know, and you could do the same for the others as well. If you're not 100% sure, you could possibly add in some sort of again a sign or something, like I said earlier on with the sell point, some sort of sign that would give you a better idea of which one was which from a distance, but you know, that's up to you. I'll leave that for you to decide. Okay, so I'm just going to press I to unload, and bam, there they go. I've unloaded all of my pigs now into that particular storage facility. So if I pull this unit out of the way here, we will then go over and have a look to see what that information is giving us. Now, because these particular storage facilities work on the fabric script, they're not instantaneous. When you put the actual when you put whatever animal you're putting into here, it won't be, you won't see the actual amount straight away. You do have to wait a little bit. So if I actually come into the trigger here with the F1 menu, you can see we have an error that says pigs layer, which is basically pigs empty, or you know, whatever. And then so we've got pigs unloading, which shows 38, which is what I put in here, and then pigs outloading shows as 0. But if I actually speed up time just a little bit, and you can also see on here it shows 0. But if I speed up time just a little bit, if all is working as it's intended to do, you can now see that pigs unloading has gone to 16 and our display shows 16. I don't want to get too far through the day, but as you progress through the time, then it will go over, so you can then take them back out again. But just note that you won't be able to get access to them immediately, so if you put them in here, you will have to wait a little while or speed up time to get them back out again. It's just the way the fabric script works. So we'll have a quick look at this one over here and see what this one is. I'm going to say this is, if I remember right when I put it down, sheep. Yep, and you can hear them anyway, so they do have sounds there, so you can tell that that one is obviously sheep. So let's have a look what we've got now on cows. So we'll go over to the sheep truck here, and we'll put our sheep into the storage. There we go. So we'll pull around into this one here. My reversing skills with these is not the greatest, so forgive me, but we'll just try and get as close as we can. Oops, try that again. There we go, I'm in the trigger, so that's good enough. So we'll press I, and there we go. So we've now put the sheep into the sheep storage area, the intermediate sheep storage, so we'll just bring this one over out of the way as well. And put it there. And we'll then go over to the last one and put our cows in. Just to test these all work, like I said earlier on in the video, I was pretty confident that at least as far as this part goes, everything should work okay. Should be no problems with any of this. Because it works in the fabric script, it's pretty straightforward. Don't generally have to make too many adjustments or anything like that. It's been set up extremely well. You know, the actual fabric script itself has been set up extremely well and user friendly. So okay, so we'll get into this trigger here, press I, and we'll then empty out our cows into that one. So fantastic, there we go. So we've now got all of our products in our storage facilities, so we can have a look at this one with the F1 menu up and just see what this gives us. And there we go, so we've got 20 cows, and again, as I said, if we sped up time, then they would show you know, on the outside as well as inside on the triggers. Just like I said, the fabric script takes a little while to register what it's doing. So while that's doing that, I will just go up to 15 times just to speed it up a little bit. We'll go over to this one over here. We'll just have a look at the interactive trigger, which I believe is just a big trigger. So you can see here that we've got some different parts for our meat and sausage. So at the moment it's showing that there's nothing in there at the moment, because obviously I haven't put anything in it, and it does give us some visual displays up here with the digital displays there, and our trigger to actually put the product in is around here, and we do actually have another digital display there as well, and it does say cow, pig and sheep. Fantastic. Kaster Food Incorporated. There we go. So we'll do these along the line of what I put them in, because now hopefully the fabric script has caught up a little bit and we should be able to get them back out. So we'll get back in a truck, doesn't really matter which one, and we'll go into the pig one first, and we'll just have a look in there. And we have our trigger there, press R to start fill pigs. So we'll do that, and we have got our 38 pigs back out again. Brilliant. So now if we can actually get into here, one thing I would probably do is to remove some of these fences. You can do that, it is actually somewhat modular, the mod, so you could potentially click on the fence panels there and delete a few of them, or delete all of them, however you wanted to do that. Maybe, you know, do this a little bit different, put some hedges around it, or some, whatever you wanted to do. You're not limited to the actual building that you've got. What you can see now, you could potentially remove some of those fences to make it a little easier to get in. I do find it a bit tricky. But anyway, so what we'll do now is we'll press I, and there we go. We've now put our pigs into there. Fantastic. So if we jump out, bring up our F1 menu, we can see now that we're at 38.9%. So fantastic. So we'll go to our sheep next. I'll just fill it up with all what we've got, and then hopefully we should get some out products, our meat and our sausages, and we can then test our cooling unit over there and see if I've been able to set the trigger up to get it all working on that side of things. So we'll get into this one now and press R, and there we go, we've got our 48 sheep, so we'll bring those over as well. Again, I would have liked to have just been able to drive straight in and sort of reversed around and whatever else, not having to do it like this, but you know, you can experiment and play around with that however you see fit. And we're in the trigger, so press I. There we go, sheep are in there as well now. And last we'll get our cows. So we'll switch over to the other truck because it happens to be in line with where we want to go. Save me moving it out of the way, so we'll just get into this one and we'll reverse back into the trigger. Press R, there we go. And we'll do the same again. Just want to test that it does actually accept all of the animals, the cows, pigs and the sheep. And then we'll go from there and hopefully get our out products, our meat and our sausage. So we'll press I again, and there we go, we have our cows now in there as well. I will leave that there, that's fine. So if I bring up the F1 menu again, you can see now that we do have quite a lot, because I'm on 15 times, so I'll slow that back down again. We've got 36% on the meats and 20% on the sausages, and you can see that there's quite a lot. So I've just chosen to go for the little van here. I put all the mods that come with this particular setup. So you've got the old Joss skins, which is pretty reliable, but it does only hold I think this one holds a little bit less than this one, I don't remember. And then you've got this massive great thing which pretty much holds everything, and then a little van here which I think I went for because it only holds the meat and the sausages, whereas this one holds a lot more, but whatever. So we'll grab this one, and we'll now come over and hopefully be able to grab our meat and sausages from here. So let's reverse into the trigger. There we go, we have our start unloading. I believe you can actually change this, yes, so if you get out the vehicle, if you press R, you can actually change this to automatic loading, which is why we require the additional trigger script that we put in earlier on to make all this work. So if you wanted to just be able to reverse up to here and it automatically load without you having to press R, you could switch it over. I personally prefer the manual loading, so if I drive into a trigger by accident, I'm not going to suddenly get something I didn't want. And you can leave the van here, or whatever vehicle, you can leave it here quite happily without it automatically loading up. So I'm going to press R, and there we go, it fills up really quickly, and I've now got some sausages in here. So we'll quickly just go over to our cold storage facility over here, and if I've set this up, like I say, OK. One thing I was curious about is whether these doors actually open, which they do not, so I've got no trigger there, that's fine. So we'll just reverse in now and we'll see what happens. So we've got our unload trigger, so we'll press I to unload, and there we go, so they're in there now. And if I then go into the escape menu and we'll come across to our prices page, we can come across and we can have a look at the top here, and we can see that the actual storage does show up in your escape menu here. So we have 1300 of the sausages, and we also have our meat sales, which I added in the sell trigger with their prices. So obviously you may need to adjust the price multipliers or pliers or whatever else to get the price that suits you for your gameplay, game style, whatever else, and what have you. So the other thing I want to show you, if we go over, you can actually see, if we zoom in, by selecting appears on PDA for our sell point, it does actually show up on the PDA as well. So wherever you put that on the map, you'll be able to find it and even teleport to it if you don't have that disabled. So I think that's really good. That's quite a nice way of knowing where you're going to put your sell point down, and obviously all the rest of it, and be able to find it relatively easy. So there's that as well. Excellent. So what we'll do now is we'll just pull out of here. I'm going to reverse back in again. Sometimes you have to do that to reset the trigger, and we do have our R to start filling. So if I press R, it brings up our standard farm silo menu, and we can go across to sausage, press start, and it fills. Fantastic. So we were able to set that trigger up and get it all working. So brilliant. So we'll unload this one again, put the sausages back into the thermo build chiller there, and we'll swing on round and pick up some meat. Oops. Am I in the trigger? Not sure. Let's have a look. Oh, there we go. It's I was a bit too far back, so there we go. So we've got our meat. Obviously this van only holds 1300. If you wanted to transport a lot more at a time, then you would go for the bigger the bigger unit here, which holds 32,000. So you could do that if you wanted to, if you were going to put the sell point a lot further away, or perhaps maybe the cold storage unit, or if you were going to bring in the bigger factory sort of setup for your cold storage and place that somewhere else on the map, then you obviously might want to get the bigger unit so you can transport a lot more at a time. But the advantage of this, it does go really fast. I think this does like over 100 if I remember right. I can't remember, but it does really nip around the map quite quickly. So, and it's a nice size as well, whereas the trucks I think sometimes can get quite big and cumbersome if you're working on a smaller map. Not so much on this map because it's just so big and wide open. So you have choices. That's the point I'm trying to make. So there we are. We have it all in the map and set up. We have our storage facilities all working. Again, as I said before, they do work on the fabric script, so once you put your animals in there, you will have to wait a little while to be able to get access to all of them, to then take them back out again. So once you put them in, you need to wait. If you want to just bring them straight over to the meat factory, do so. Don't put them in their storage, because you won't be able to get them out straight away again. And then you know, once you've I guess the idea of this would be that you could buy X amount of cows, sheep, pigs, and then as they produce extra ones, you would take the additions out, put them in storage, and then once the storage is built up to a certain amount, you could then take them from there, process them, get your meat and your sausages, and then sell them off from there. So that's what we're going to test now. We're going to just take, actually I'll take it from the factory, that's fine. So we'll just take again some sausages to start with, and we'll then go over and just test our sell point, make sure that works okay. So we'll do that. If we come out, come over to our sell point here, wherever that is, there we go. So you might want to set up maybe a slightly different sell point, a bit more obvious, I don't know, whatever, and we'll do that. Am I in the trigger properly? No, it wasn't in the trigger properly, I don't think. Let's do that. We're going to unload, there we go. So there we go. So that one works. We'll test the meat as well, why not? I don't know what that was, I just actually sold. It doesn't matter. Perhaps that was the meat. Yeah, it might have been. We'll do our sausages then. I don't remember which one we just sold. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So let's do that. Start the trigger. It's a bit finicky, I think, this trigger. There we go. Selling. Perfect. So there we go. Kaster Food Incorporated, placeable, all set up in the map through Giants Editor. Now obviously I haven't brought the other facility in, the cold storage facility. I quite like the idea of this one. Potentially you could put a couple of these down, or as many as you wanted to. Just make sure that you set up different save IDs for each one, and set up your different indexes in your map 01 for each different one, so they don't have duplications of either the index or the storage IDs, or save IDs. And you can have quite a few of these on the map, so that may be a better option. Up to you, you know, like I say, you know, you're not limited, just have a play around, find what works for you, and the map that you're working on will possibly dictate which way you go. So if it's a smaller map, then that possibly would be a better option. If it's a much bigger map and you've got a larger area, then the bigger cold storage facility, factory, whatever you want to call it, might be the better option. But anyway, so there we go. Thanks very much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.